Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another live stream with Heritage Center. I'm Brian Schulte, and I'm the Graduate Assistant Audience Services here at the University of Dubuque Heritage Center. I know we would much rather be back in John and Atlas Butler Hall to see the amazingly talented Alpin Hong, but I am beyond excited and grateful to be able to be with you all tonight virtually. To kick off our program tonight, I will go ahead and introduce our Executive Director of Heritage Center, Tom Robbins.
Hey, Brian. Thank you for serving as my co-host tonight. Appreciate that. And it's great to be here for another edition of our live stream series. And I want to remind people that to get the best possible sound experience, you may want to grab a set of headphones. I'm told, especially with piano music, which we're going to hear some tonight, that if you have a set of headphones on, you can take a second now while I'm blabbing on here for a couple minutes to grab those headphones and have the best possible experience. The other thing I want to remind everybody of is that tonight we have a special surprise guest besides Alpin. And we're going to have that surprise guest with us sometime during the second half of the program tonight. So we're going to keep you on the edge of your seats right from the beginning and be prepared for that special guest. But without further ado, I want to introduce Alpin. And before we bring Alpin on, I just want to talk a little bit about my past experience with Alpin. Our relationship, or I should say my relationship with Alpin as a guest artist, believe it or not, goes way back to April of 2008. I was with another venue in Wisconsin, and we hosted Alpin as a soloist. Later on, a couple years later, we brought Alpin back, and he performed with a symphony orchestra, where I was in Wisconsin. And then when I came to Heritage Center, shortly after I started at Heritage Center, we brought Alpin Hong in for a kind of a combined theater musical performance called Chasing Chopin. And that was a wonderful performance. And lest I forget, he also came and was actually introduced to Dubuque audiences as a guest artist with the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra. And that was back in November of 2014. And he just completely wowed and enamored all of us with his performance with the symphony. And then later on, like I said, came and played at the Heritage Center. He's performed at Walt Disney Hall. He's been at Carnegie Hall. He's been at the White House. He's been at venues all over the world. He was schooled at Juilliard, and he is just a fantastic performer as well as a human being that I'm just, it's an honor for me to be associated with Alpin. So let's bring Alpin on. Hey, Alpin.
Hey, how you doing?
Looking forward to this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alpin Hong. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. My first piece will be the Prelude in A minor, BWV 894 by Johann Sebastian Bach. Thank you very much. Now, if anything defines, of course, the theme of this year, it is adversity. Normally, I'd be performing for you on the concert grand on the magnificent stage of the Heritage Center. But of course, because of the pandemic, I'm here at home in Riverside, California, performing on the piano my parent bought me when I was 4 years old. Because I am home, as you all are, I could be performing in a sweats and a t-shirt, but I've missed the feeling of the stage so much that I decided to dust off my concert suit, shave, and remember what it's like to be a human being again. Performing music has always been about adapting to and transcending limitations. And I have the Heritage Center to thank for showcasing my autobiographical show about my life chasing Chopin. Making distance music is no different. For example, I found that playing pieces using lots of pedal and notes in the bass sounds super muddy online, and so I'm adjusting my repertoire for you today. Since I've been trapped at home and starting to get tired of only hearing the same old instrument, I'm going to transform the piano into something else for my next piece. I'd like to perform for you the Etude Opus 25 No. 1 by Chopin, also known as the Harp. Thank you. As you know, I would like to just have a short discussion actually with Tom at the moment. He said we wanted to have a conversation about what I've been doing. So Tom?
Got some questions, but I guess I just wanted to react to what we just heard, and then we'll ask for Brian to ask his questions.
Okay.
And that is, even though online, obviously, the sound isn't as beautiful as it is in the concert hall, it's just great to be hearing something live, something in real time, and it's a special treat with you being at the keyboard. But Brian, are you going to join us? Are you there? I wanted to start out by asking Brian if you had some questions for Alpin, and then I'll take it from there. Oh, your mic. There you go.
There we go. Am I back now?
Yes.
Great. Alpin, my biggest question for you, just reading up on you, of course, you're amazing at the piano. We all just heard it. I've heard some stuff of yours from before. But reading up, you have a background in martial arts, video games, sports, and you indulge yourself in a bunch of different avenues. In today's day and age where everyone feels you have to focus on one thing to be good at it, what kind of made you want to try a bunch of different things that maybe not necessarily connect in the long run?
Well, I've actually realized that just after I graduated from Juilliard and I went into the performing world for the first time, I, like many musicians, made the assumption that if you played Beethoven, you played it beautifully, the audience would show up. But of course, in today's day and age where people's attentions are taken by so many different avenues just in the world of entertainment, and I used to joke that, we classical pianists, we're the only ones who compete against 4-year-olds on Ellen and dead people. That's kind of what we have going forth, and the fact that really we're going up against $12.99 a month, right? Netflix, you can stream endless hours of entertainment, but what is it that is most compelling about a live experience that is irreplaceable? You can have the highest fidelity performance of any band that you love, but there's nothing quite like the idea of going to a concert. And so I realized that when I was looking out at my audience, first of all, they really wanted to know more about me. And so that's when I learned to speak and introduce myself, give the piece a little bit of context so that even those that weren't classical fans could get something out of the performance. I also tried to test as a test run for my performances and my lectures, playing for kindergartners. Now, and you can imagine, of course, compared to a classroom full of kindergartners, I no longer fear any adult audience in the world. The very fact that they have a 5-second attention span and I had to transform myself into a living cartoon for them sometimes actually gave me the skills to be able to adapt quickly to any situation. And as any musician knows, sometimes you're playing outdoors, sometimes you're playing online, and you can't depend on the internet to carry you. And so that adaptability, actually, I give that the reason why I still have a career today, because I've been able to adapt to different audiences, different venues, different countries, different people from different cultural backgrounds. And so that's why I continue to learn and grow.
That actually leads perfectly into a couple questions I wanted to ask. I neglected to mention during the introduction that when you were in Dubuque back in 2014, prior to the symphony performance, you spent, it was either a week or 2 weeks in the schools here.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like 3 services a day. It was a marathon. It was an absolute marathon, and you were really a trooper. And I think this is part of the reason why they call you kind of a classical concert pianist for the I generation, right?
Right. The very fact that I think it's the method that I use to be able to capture young audiences is the fact that everybody says that they don't listen to music anymore. In fact, they actually listen to more music than ever. But it's not kind of like the classical tradition or church music or choir music that we would have grown up as I did in the 80s and maybe in prior generations, where you heard music in the home. So they're getting a lot of their music from movie soundtracks and video games and commercial jingles and things like that. But I still believe that is a great gateway into introducing the classical repertoire and the whole idea of classical artistry in general. The fact that they have something recognizable they can use. So I actually use music from famous movies and TV shows and video games, to be able to introduce Bach, to say like there is no Darth Vader without Beethoven. There is no Mario Brothers without blues. And so that's actually been incredibly successful. And I realized that it translated also to adult audiences.
Yeah, I also noticed that you're actually, I deal with agents and booking artists, and you're on a roster with other artists that aren't actually, there are no other classical music artists on this agency's roster. Why would you choose an agency like that?
What's amazing is that my relationship with my agent, Greg Little, first of all, he's about my age. And he actually, as you'll see, for those of you that look at his roster at Little Revolution Artists, it is mostly rock bands and rappers and other kinds of pop artists. But what he really recognized in me is that what he really loved was that he felt like he could put me into non-classical venues and then I'd be able to make it work. And so when it comes to my audiences, sometimes I have played in clubs, I have played in museums, and I played in these kind of alternative venues. And of course, making the adjustment to the new instrument every time has not always been easy. But what has been great is that going into these venues, and the Heritage Center is not necessarily, yes, it is a concert hall, but your programming is not completely classical music and orchestras. But that your audience, even for those of them that, for example, are older and raised in the tradition of going to symphony concerts and classical concerts, we've been about 100 years from the golden age of classical music when that's all there was. And even the most classical of us know the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and Dr. Dre and all of these artists of today. That there is context, and the fact that music is just a way of marking time with emotion. There was a quote about that. Is something that is universal that we all can understand.
Haven't you all played on the same stage with John McEuen?
Yes.
I don't know if people know, but just so I don't want to assume people know. But John McEuen, I don't know if he plays with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band anymore or not, but he's one of the original members. But you've played with him. Right?
Yeah, so I was introduced to John. Obviously, I'd heard the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. They are, folk rock legends.
Americana.
Americana. They were the first. They were actually the first American bands to tour the Soviet Union back in the day. And I have a very story about the first time I met John. I just called him up, and he's this gruff voice answer going, "Hey, who is this?" I was like, "Hi, I'm Alpin Hong, I'm the musician. I really would like to meet you." He's like, "Oh, okay. Why don't you just come over next week?" I was like, "Okay." And he gave me his address of his apartment in Manhattan at the time. And I went over and I just, knocked on the door. I'm like, I'm about to meet this rock legend. And, if you haven't met him, first of all, he's like, he looks like he's like 6'5", and he looks exactly like Gandalf. So Gandalf opens the door, he's kind of this gruff, guy, and he's got a heart of gold, but it's not immediately apparent right away. And he shoos me in. And what's really funny is that we walked into his studio, and he kind of like kicked something out of the way. And I thought, maybe it was just a piece of music or maybe a speaker or something. I looked down and it's a Grammy. So he had just like kicked a Grammy award out of the way because apparently he has so many that, they're just in the way now. And so we made a show called Classical versus Bluegrass, Alpin Hong and John McEuen. We actually considered calling it an old man and an Asian, but we didn't know if we'd be able to sell exactly like that. But we did a few shows in Phoenix and in Denver and in Connecticut, and they've gone over really well. And I can't wait to be able to play with them again.
I want that show. Can we get that back?
Yeah, we'll resurrect it for you. Yes.
Let's talk about that. But I don't know many musicians as relatable as you are, Alpin, and I've told many people that if there's anybody that can save classical music for the long term and make it accessible, it's Alpin Hong. I mean, you've got the personality for it, and you're just doing a great job in so many ways. I've got one last question, and I think this is going to kind of lead us into another piece that you're going to do. Unless, Brian, did you have anything else?
No, you can go ahead and go on with yours.
I was just going to say, I've heard some theories that there may be some kind of cultural renaissance as the coronavirus becomes part of our past horizon. Are you somebody that subscribes to that line of thinking?
Yes, absolutely. If there's anything, Yes, if there's anything that the pandemic has shown, it has shown the ingenuity of what people are able to do. And I'm sorry, the sun is going down here and just changing lighting. I'm going to shut the shutters. This is part of a live broadcast, folks. This is not. I'll be right back in a second.
That's just fine, and we will.
All right.
Well, I was going to say we'll improvise, but you're back.
Yes. So yes, I do subscribe to the fact that there already has been a renaissance in music. As you can see, even like I said, the most heralded old institutions, orchestras, are expanding their repertoire beyond what I jokingly refer to as the old dead white guys. You know, that European tradition has now been taken, and they are now presenting composers from many different cultural backgrounds within the same classical space. Also, the very fact that music is so much easier to produce now. Back in the day, in order to have an album, you needed to get sometimes a multi-million-dollar deal with a major label in order to distribute it. But now, as we can see with social media and TikTok, people are able to get their content out relatively cheaply and relatively simply. So anyone who has a good idea can get it out there. But I make the distinction, of course, that not all art is good art, and those that have worked on it and crafted over time, people still do recognize talent and effort.
Absolutely, and I can tell just talking to you, there's been a process you've gone through in trying to reinvent yourself. I mean, it's an ongoing kind of evolutionary process, and yeah. I'll leave it at that. I think we're going to go on to another tune here.
Yes, well, I did want to, actually, the subject of adaptability is something that I wanted to talk about. As you know, of course, the performing arts world has been absolutely obliterated by COVID-19. The scale of the tragedy is difficult to measure. Legendary New York Metropolitan Opera has just announced its closure until September 2021. And Broadway has also been closed until 2021. Cirque du Soleil cut over 3,500 jobs. Feld Entertainment, one of the biggest presenting entertainment talent agencies that has Disney on Ice, Monster Jam, The Circus, has permanently fired 90% of their workforce. Live Nation, AEG, and other concert promoters have laid off a majority of their employees. Talent agencies and management companies who plan and book concerts have also laid off millions of employees. Cruise boat artists, Coachella, Bonnaroo, Glastonbury, Jazz Festival, all of these are gone. It is predicted that 90% of independent music rooms could close if this continues. And that is why all of us need to support our local live performance venues, our museums, and the other places that are the gatekeepers for artistry in our community. They are all suffering, they're having a hard time, but with your help, of course, if you plan to support them, please contact the Heritage Center afterwards, and I'm sure they will find ways and give you paths to be able to support them during this time of need. Now, in terms of personally how I've actually adapted to myself, of course, I no longer can tour, and I'm technically unemployed. But then I was like, well, how can I use these skills that I learned, like video editing and speaking and hosting, to be able to reinvent myself and still offer something? And so I've been really, really blessed by this incredible network of presenters like the Heritage Center who know that I have still something to give, even if the performing space is a little bit different. And so I have done fundraisers and spoken on several political campaigns. And that's why I urge you all to come together to do everything we can to support these arts institutions until we defeat this pandemic. Along the way, I realized that I and my fellow artists also have a responsibility to speak out about the issues of today. And so for my next piece, I would like to tell you a story about a man who would have turned 250 this year. Ludwig van Beethoven originally dedicated the Third Symphony, the Eroica, to Napoleon Bonaparte, who he believed embodied the democratic and anti-monarchical ideas of the French Revolution. Beethoven's secretary, Ferdinand Ries, said that in writing this symphony, Beethoven had been thinking of Bonaparte. But Bonaparte, while he was still first consul, at that time Beethoven had the highest esteem for him and compared him to the greatest consuls of ancient Rome. Not only I, but many of Beethoven's closer friends saw this symphony on his table, beautifully copied in manuscript with the word Bonaparte inscribed at the very top of the title page, and Ludwig van Beethoven at the very bottom. I was the first to tell him the news that Bonaparte had declared himself emperor, whereupon Beethoven broke into a rage and exclaimed, "So he is no more than a common mortal. Now he too, he will tread underfoot all the rights of man, indulge only his ambition. Now he will think himself superior to all men, become a tyrant." And Beethoven went to the table, seized the top of the title page, tore it in half, and threw it on the floor. And so this idea that even Beethoven and other artists that have followed him and other composers, they had a sense of social justice they would put through in their music. And so for my next piece, I'd like to perform one of the most beautiful and poignant pieces ever written for the piano, Clair de Lune by Debussy. But I'd like to use my performance to remind us of the continuing fight against inequality and injustice. Ladies and gentlemen, Clair de Lune. Emmett Till. Breonna Taylor. Rayshard Brooks. Daniel Prude. Ezell Ford. Dante Parker. Terrence Crutcher. Levante Biggs. Eric Harris. Tatiana Jefferson. Ahmaud Arbery. Michael Noel. Aaron Bailey. Trayvon Martin. Laura Rosser. Tatiana Jefferson. Stephon Clark. Philando Castile. Junior Prosper. Maya Hall. Anthony Hill. Alton Sterling. Michelle Clouseau. Freddie Gray. Janisha Fonbu. Eric Garner. Patterson Brown. India Kager. Tamir Rice. Michael Brown. Lamontez Jones. Jamar Clark. Samuel DeBose. Sandra Bland. Eric Reason. Mary Trujillo. Betty Jones. Michael Sabbie. Tony McDade. Tanisha Anderson, Peter Gaines, Tori Robinson, Alteria Woods, George Floyd. No justice, no peace. Thank you.
Very moving.
The greatest gift the performing arts give us is the connections we make between ourselves and others that we might not make otherwise. I've come to know and love the city of Dubuque and remember getting a steak at the Woodfire Grill and a beer at the Yardarm. One of the greatest memories in Dubuque was my debut with the Dubuque Symphony performing Liszt's Piano Concerto No. 1 with Maestro William Interrogator, after which I got to sit down with him and composer Zane Merritt for an after-show drink. Tom?
Yeah, you're kind of leading in here, but trying to have folks on the edge of their seat. So yeah, it's come time in our program to bring on our surprise special guest. Some folks out there might know him maybe as the music director and conductor of the Cheyenne, Wyoming Symphony Orchestra, but also music director and conductor of our very own Dubuque Symphony Orchestra. He's had the privilege and the pleasure, as we mentioned earlier, of working with you, Alpin. Can we bring on William Interrogator?
Yes!
Hello, everyone. It's great to see you, Alpin. Great to see you, Tom. It's great to be with you virtually. And bravo, Alpin, for these beautiful performances you've already given us tonight and that very special tribute you just performed with the Debussy. Fantastic.
Thank you,
Bravo.
thank you. How are you doing, Maestro? And what have you been up to, my man?
I've been hanging in there. I miss you. I really wish we could be making music together, but
Right.
It's been hard, you know?
What is a conductor without an orchestra? It's like a tree falling in the forest.
Exactly.
Can you fill me in on how you've been using the time?
Well, it was initially it was so depressing not to be able to make music with my friends in the orchestras. And so I had to do something with music. And so I just sat at the piano for like an hour a day at least. And I just started woodshedding pieces and learned a bunch more music. As you may recall, piano is not my main instrument. Oboe is actually my main instrument. But and I did get my oboe out quite a bit too. But I found a lot of solace in the classics with Bach and Beethoven and Brahms. And I've just been, pieces like the Satie Gymnopédie, very calming pieces, lots of Bach, lots of what is it right here? I've got the Bach French suites. So I've just been such great music, but it doesn't take the place of performing with my friends, with you, for an audience. The Dubuque Symphony Orchestra started a Live from Our Living Room series back in April, so fairly early on. Yeah, and I was the first one. I dared to perform on piano on that, which is,
What'd you play?
Oh, I just played, a little bit of this and that. I did.
I can't believe I missed that. Oh, man, you're hiding it from me, dude.
I did a Brahms intermezzo, that one in A. I did, Beethoven, the first movement of the Moonlight, a bunch of Bach pieces, and a little bit of Gershwin. It was fun.
Dude, now that I know that, I'm sorry. The next time I play with you, you are coming and we're doing a piano duet for the encore.
No,
that is it.
I don't think so. So. You are too good, my friend. But I've been getting my oboe out. I'm going to be doing a concerto for oboe and violin and orchestra with the former concertmaster of the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra, who's still very beloved by me and this community, Caroline Curtis. So we're going to do that in February, so I'm getting ready for that. But yeah, we started this Live from Our Living Room series, and it went every Friday on our Facebook page at 7 o'clock. And then as the sort of summer turned into fall, we decided to go every other week. But that's one way that we're staying connected with our audiences. We have also had some chamber music performances outdoors.
Oh,
so we
great.
had a string quartet from their orchestra, as well as a brass quintet from our orchestra, performing at different venues around Dubuque. And that's been very well received. You know, the musicians were outdoors. Now that the weather has turned really cold, that I think we're done with those. But we've had to postpone our season, as like you were mentioning about many of these other larger organizations. We have I guess the good fortune of being a relatively smaller arts organization. We can kind of adapt a little bit more easily than places like the Metropolitan Opera.
Right.
So with the Dubuque Symphony, our season will start with our holiday concerts in December, and then we'll continue all the way through June. And what we're doing is taking account social distancing and you know, having smaller orchestras on stage and social distancing in the audience as well.
Wonderful. Oh, you know, as Darwin said, right, it's not the strongest or the most intelligent necessarily that survive, but that is most adaptable to change. And I really agree with you that I find that those entities and the musicians who are looking for this as an opportunity, as you have, to delve back into the literature, which I think is really amazing. It must be very frustrating also to go back and be like, why don't these work the way that they used to? Because you know, I'm now a homeschool teacher. I'm not a classical pianist. You know, don't let the suit and the shiny piano fool you. I'm like many dads out there. I've been playing Professor Double Dad at home. So again, coming to play again tonight, I was really nervous. This is the first concert experience I've had in a long time.
Well, I totally relate. And I liked what you said about you actually shaved, because you know, during Shelter in Place, I let this grow out quite a bit, and today too for that.
Wow, amazing, yes.
But actually, I have to say, a silver lining has been, and I'm sure you can relate because of your touring schedule pre-COVID, it's been wonderful to be able to spend so much time with my family. I mean, it's almost like it's been summer break this whole time, and now you're right, it's extra hard now that the kids are back in school, and we have to do part of the teaching days, and my kids go to school, you know, 2 days or 3 days a week, depending on the week. How is it out there in California?
Well, again, you know, our county, Riverside County, has, you know, gone back to the most restrictive. So, you know, we haven't necessarily, we haven't reopened again. The school is continuing to be all virtual. But I do have some news to share with you. Oh, yeah. Actually, this is something that's happened recently, but this is perhaps the first time I'll be announcing it live like this, is that I'm going to be relocating to Honolulu, Hawaii in January. Yes, my wife is going to be accepting a position there. So I am in the process of moving my family across the ocean. So in terms of adaptability, 2021 is all new.
Oh my goodness. What a huge and exciting change. I mean,
yeah. It's very exciting.
But still, both times I said to myself, why don't we live here? It's an amazing place. Wow. I'll have to come visit you.
Yes, well, you'll definitely, visiting me is going to become a lot more fun now. But I do want to say, like, you know, before we bring the evening to a close, unfortunately, I know we can hang out. I know I want to talk to you for like 3 hours now. But you know, I can't wait to see you and perform with you again. And you know, perhaps the grand return of the Dubuque Symphony, you know, when this is all over. Just because my driveway is a little longer doesn't mean I wouldn't love to come back, get a beer with you at the Yard Art, and then come back. So, Maestro, it's been so great to see you and talk to you. It does my heart good. Thank you so much for, you know, continuing to support your orchestra musicians, and we'll see you again soon. Tom, you'd like to come back?
I don't know. There I am. I'm back. I wanted to thank William, too, for being a part of our live stream tonight. And I encourage people, especially during these difficult times, and always support your local symphony orchestra, the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra. We would really appreciate that. And I will say that we at the Heritage Center look forward to a time in the future where maybe the orchestra can come back and do a concert at the Heritage Center as well.
Tom and I have been talking about the Heritage and the Dubuque Symphony partnering to bring you back to Dubuque, Alpin. I know both Tom and I can't wait.
Yes.
We can't wait. And we also have this little organ we're building that I told Alpin about as well, but we won't get too deep into that right now. Thank you very much, William.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Maestro. Take care.
We're closing in towards the end of the program here, and I know we want to hear some more music from Alpin, but before that, I just have a few housekeeping things. And one is I want to thank those that are working behind the scenes. I want to thank Brian Schulte and Eleni Kaler for their help with the broadcast tonight. I also want to encourage people to tune in to our next live stream broadcast, which will be November 19th, another Thursday night. It will be 7:30 the next time. And it's with a phenomenal actor, musician, singer by the name of Daryl Van Leer, who actually we will host next March, potentially, hopefully if COVID dies down a little bit. But we'll host him with a show about Martin Luther King Jr. He'll be portraying MLK Jr. So we look forward to Daryl Van Leer on November 19th. But last but not least, I just wanted to say thank you again to you, Alpin, for joining us tonight, for doing this program. I know you're doing much of this just out of the kindness and goodness of your heart, and we really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in person and working with you one-on-one again in the future.
Thank you so much, Tom. And ladies and gentlemen, everyone who's watching, it has been my absolute privilege to be with you tonight. I've spoken to how music brings us together, and it breaks down the barriers, and it crosses the distance that separates us. Because it is impossible to hate one another when you share a love of something together. And so my final piece to close out our evening is an homage to the on-screen entertainment we've loved throughout the generations. Please be safe, wear a mask, and please, please, please vote if you haven't already. Ladies and gentlemen, Malagueña in the style of Alpin Hong.